So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Emily Rothen and I'm a drama therapist. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague Ruby.
Hi, I'm Ruby Stonesharp. I'm an occupational therapist.
So before we start the presentation, we just wanted to give you a brief overview of our service. So we are both team members on the Battersea Mental Health Support Team. And it's an early intervention service for children and adolescents' emotional wellbeing and mental health. So we work in about 20 schools in the Battersea area, and we offer parent-guided self-help for anxiety and behavioural difficulties, drama therapy, occupational therapy, and workshops such as this one for parents and carers, and also training for school staff around children's mental health. So today's session you're joining us for is for supporting your child's emotional wellbeing if they're starting reception or nursery in September. And just a couple of housekeeping things before we get going. As I mentioned, we will be recording the presentation for our YouTube channel so that people can watch it at a later date. But we'll turn off the recording before we take questions at the end. And so just to ask you, please to stay on mute. If you want to raise your hand at any point during the conversation, to ask a question or put anything in the chat conversation as well, please do. And so we're going to present for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end for questions. And we have also put a link in the chat for a feedback form. It'd be really helpful if you could fill that in. That's just a very brief form before you leave.
Okay, I put it in the chat again.
Thank you. Okay, so our plan for today, we're going to start with an icebreaker just to find out a little bit from you about kind of your thoughts about starting school or starting something new. We're going to look at the developmental stage that your children are at, and just thinking about some of the kind of things that they, will be really exploring at the moment. Ruby's going to talk about sensory considerations. And then we're going to look at play and imagination, and expressing emotions, and we've got some tools and resources that you might want to use over the summer and as your child starts next term. And then we'll have some questions at the end. So it would be really useful to hear just briefly if you want to put a comment in the chat of how old your child is and whether they're starting nursery or reception, and if you want to say where they're going, please do as well, just so we know who's here today. And just while you're doing that, please don't worry about taking notes. You'll have the video on the YouTube channel, and we can also email the slides to you if you'd like to. We'll put the email address up at the end so that you've got all the resources written down. So don't worry about having to write things down as we're speaking. Okay. So we just thought this would be a useful starting point to share. So your child doesn't need to be able to read, write, or do sums before they start school. Children start school with a wide range of abilities, and their teacher will be skilled at helping children progress at their own level. So what's important is that you and your child have fun together in those preschool months and years, sharing stories, singing songs, and playing games. So it takes the academic pressure that I know a lot of parents and carers feel, takes that off, and just thinking kind of more on what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so just for our icebreaker, we wanted to ask you to think of a time when you first last did something new. If you can remember back to when you started school and any kind of feelings you had and expectations, any hopes or worries, or it might be starting a new job or something more, yeah, more recent. So if you can put any thoughts in the chat, that would be, or if you want to come off mute and say any thoughts, that would be good, great. So yeah, just thinking about what your hopes were, what your worries were when you started something new. And you might also want to think about kind of thinking about your own child and what your expectations are for their school or for their nursery. Kind of thinking about, did you spend ages deciding on the school, or is it a school that your family has has already been at, or did you go to that school? Have you got older siblings there? So just thinking what sorts of questions you're asking yourself. So yeah, if you're starting, thinking about starting a new job, we've got thinking about what my new colleagues will be like, will I be successful? And worries, worries about changing setting. If your child's at a different nursery and then they're starting somewhere new, and adjusting to new people. And I know that's kind of been made more difficult with the pandemic as well. So it might be a worry at the top of people's minds. Okay, so thank you very much for your comments. If you want to keep putting anything in the chat, please do. But just those are, yeah, just some thoughts to think about, sort of thinking about how, if we think about when we started something new, and then kind of relating that to kind of possible thoughts that our children might be having as well. So we're going to look at the developmental stage from age 3 to 4, first of all. So this is if your child is starting in school nursery. And so these are some of the themes, common themes for children of that age. So learning to play with others rather than alone, starting to take turns, being very active, learning through doing, so trying new things themselves, and just kind of trying things out physically, and kind of taking some sort of age kind of appropriate risks as well, because their awareness of danger is also starting to grow. Enjoying sensory play and exploration. Separating more easily from parents and carers. This is very different for different children. So, it really depends kind of where your child is at. Some children do this more easily than others. So please don't worry if your child is finding this difficult at the moment. Showing a wide range of emotions. Copying adults and friends in play and real life. You might hear your child kind of starting to repeat what you're saying, and kind of following other children in their play, and kind of bringing that into their own. You might hear them imitating words and phrases that they've heard. They may get upset with major changes in routine. So the kind of natural responses to big changes, and showing affection for others without prompting as well. And then moving up to age 4 to 5. So some of the the stages in 3 to 4 will be here as well. There's a lot of overlap, but some new themes might be learning, understanding, and sensitivity to others' feelings. Lots of changes in behaviour, so going from being very cooperative to suddenly being very demanding or not doing anything that they're asked to do. So those kind of sort of swings in cooperation and behaviour. Again, still very active, learning through doing. We've got the sensory play, importance of fun and relaxing activities, the best way to learn. And I know if you've already spoken to your nursery staff or reception teachers, you'll find that what they are talking about a lot is learning through play. And so that's really one of the main focuses in nursery and reception. Learning some more social skills and being very creative in how they think about and represent their experiences through art and through role play, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Developing friendships, they're becoming a bit more mature in their approach to friendships. They might even talk about having best friends at this age. And more understanding of rules. And in reception, the class rules will be something for them to learn, and it might be that you can do some of that at home as well. So Ruby's going to take over. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a new headset. Yeah, so we're going to cover 4 main areas today in terms of what you as parents and carers can do to support your child and yourselves in this transition. So we're going to look at preparation, kind of practical ways to make the unfamiliar familiar, and looking at some of the skills that they'll be kind of practicing as they go into nursery or reception. I'm going to talk a bit about sensory regulation and some strategies around that. Emily's going to talk about the importance of play and validation of feelings and emotions as well. So first of all, we wanted to think a little bit about maybe how your child is feeling as well. We've discussed a little bit kind of how as adults you might be feeling already. So put yourself in your child's shoes. How do we think that they're feeling as this transition approaches? What are some of the thoughts they might be having? And these are some of the kind of common hopes and fears that we thought may be kind of coming up for them, but obviously it's going to be individual for each child, so feel free to put any other hopes and fears you feel like your child might be having in the chat. With starting school, there'll be lots of kind of new experiences, and there'll be lots of new smells, new sounds, a busier environment, potentially more movement, especially with starting reception. There might be bigger children in the older years, and new adults to get used to. So kind of thoughts such as this teacher doesn't look like my nursery key worker, or I might get lost, might be quite common. Getting used to a new bigger space, or just a new space in general. And then we've kind of got more kind of COVID related difficulties. Obviously the last couple of years haven't been as usual, and your child might have had less contact with children of their age up until this point. They might wonder when they get into their new class, who are all these children? Might be feeling nervous of big groups, and maybe what they can and can't touch. And for those starting nursery or and reception as well, potentially, it might be the first time away from parents. There might be kind of a feeling of missing parents. And one thing that can be really helpful here is taking a transitional object. So an object from home, so maybe like a favourite toy, to kind of bridge that gap between home and the new setting. And along with these worries, there might be some excitement as well. And developmentally, as kind of Emily's just covered, children are really at an age where they want to explore and have new experiences. There might be some excitement around like new toys, and I'm going to be at school like my older siblings. I think we have a hand up. Marina?
Yeah, able to type in the chat room for some reason, I don't know.
Oh.
But when you say transitional toy, what do you mean by that? Like just take it to the school and then have it when they come out, or what do you? Because I know that the current preschool she's at the moment, they're not allowed to take toys into school. It's forbidden. So I just wondered if you could elaborate on that a bit for me.
Emily, do you want to explain that
Sorry.
one? Okay.
I know it has become trickier with, with the COVID rules of the nurseries, whether children are allowed to take in, a soft toy with them or not. So I would maybe just check with, see kind of rules are changing slightly. So just maybe check with the new setting if they can, bring in a cuddly toy or just to have in their bag. So if they're upset, they can use it. I know some nursery and reception settings also have pictures of family around the classroom as well. So, or they have it in a space where children can go to. Again, if they're upset, then they can go and look at pictures of family or favorite people in their life and talk about them. So it might be something just to ask if you think that might be helpful for your child, just to ask the new setting and see what what they can do. So kind of something that's going to sort of remind them of home, basically, is what we mean by that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, she's a child that goes into anywhere and is quite happy to make friends, and she's really easygoing. But this will be her third education setting in the last 2 years, because we were at one nursery and then we couldn't stay for various reasons. For government funding, basically, so we had to start a new one, and now she can't stay at the school she's at net preschool in, because she didn't get a place, and so she's changing again. And I think she makes bonds with other children really quickly, and she's already, like you said before, new best friends, and she's very, very close to them, and we do a lot of kind of play dates outside. And I'm just if that would be helpful to do that would be something. I mean, I'm not worried, but then I'm kind of worried because of such a big change in her life in a short period of time.
So I think kind of sharing those thoughts with with the new nursery, and just kind of saying what could she bring something in, be kind of something to do. Could just be sort of there if she needs it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So thinking a little bit about preparation and making the unfamiliar familiar. The idea is that the more your child gets used to the idea of school or their kind of new nursery classroom and routine and what that might look like, the more prepared and competent they may feel. And if they're feeling more competent, hopefully they feel a little less anxious and might be able to start with an element of confidence. And we just wanted to mention that in EYFS, in early years, there's a much more of a focus on kind of personal, social, emotional development and relationships and communication, even in reception as well as nursery. So kind of the competencies that children are expected to work towards are much less academic than sometimes parents think. So it's not all going to be about reading and writing. And they'll kind of do everything at their own pace, and a lot of like learning through play, like Emily mentioned. So hopefully that can kind of ease some anxieties around the academic side of things. Some other ways you can prepare, so being able to picture starting and the environment, what it will look like, maybe visual images of the school. The school website might be a really good resource, and you can look at things like uniforms. They might have pictures of children playing or the actual playground. Some school websites have photos of school staff, maybe even their new teacher, so kind of giving that visual help. And then getting used to the routine. So this might be kind of taking the route to school. Often the reception or nursery class is on the ground floor, so you might be able to see part of it and kind of talk about that with your child. You might want to practice the school morning routine, so kind of the getting up and the getting ready. And it may be helpful to have this as a visual timetable, especially at that age. And you could have kind of before, after school, kind of helps them to know what to expect, and they kind of feel a bit more orientated. And you might practice some skills. So things like getting their uniform on. You might not expect them to put it on completely independently, but maybe kind of looking at the order things go on in. What are you going to be wearing every day for school? Other skills like carrying a plate and tray, or if they're taking packed lunch, making sure they can open their lunchbox and close it, hanging up coats, because that will be definitely a skill that they're encouraged to do at school, and as well as doing up buttons and tidying up at home, can kind of reflect the tidying up they'll be doing a bit more as they kind of progress through nursery and reception. And make it fun as well. You can have music while tidying. A lot of classrooms do that as well, so it will kind of parallel. And we have linked a uniform colouring in game in the resources at the end of this presentation. So if you get the slides, you'll have access to that. And just to say, they don't have to have mastered any of these by the time they start school, or even after they start. It's just getting used to that idea of these skills, and exploring and practicing them. And yeah, like we said, they'll kind of do things at their own pace, and that's okay. So I'm going to move on to talk about sensory regulation. We're going to think of it in terms of what we call alert levels or arousal levels. So I'll explain a bit more. Before any of us can learn, play, work, do any of our daily tasks, we have to be in a regulated state, our bodies, and we're kind of thinking about our nervous system here. And a key way that we kind of regulate our bodies and our nervous system is through our senses that we're taking in all the time. And I'm going to use kind of this seesaw Winnie the Pooh, a visual aid to help us. So like I've said, we're all processing sensory information from our environment all the time, and it's constantly impacting our day-to-day lives, and it kind of takes us up and down on this seesaw. And ideally, most of the time, we are where Winnie the Pooh is. And this is where our nervous system is regulated. And so it's kind of our own perfect balance of being kind of calm but alert, and we're able to focus and kind of do the things we need to do. And this is the perfect spot for focusing, learning, playing, working. So this is for adults and children. And so for your child, this is where they can do their best listening, their best learning, their best playing. However, when our body's feeling a bit more dysregulated, it can be hard to kind of regulate our emotions and focus and kind of adjust our energy levels, and it can also impact our behavior. And dysregulation can look one of two ways, although you can kind of go in between the two as well, but we'll just think of it in two ways today. So you can fall on the too low side, which here we've got Eeyore representing, and this is where the nervous system runs a bit slower than usual, and we might call this like low arousal or low alert. And here someone, whether child or adult, may present as kind of low energy, moving slowly, a bit sluggish, lethargic. They might be a bit zoned out, kind of like daydreaming, hard to get their attention. And also this can also be kind of the withdrawn and sad kind of presentation, because being kind of in this low alert stage also can impact our mood. And then on the other end, we have Tigger representing someone who's a bit more high alert. And this is where our nervous system's running a bit faster than usual. We can call this high arousal, high alert. Someone might present as quite high energy, bouncing about, not able to sit still, kind of wriggly. This might be kind of excitement, or it might be a bit more like worry. And you can see a bit of kind of anger, agitation here, kind of depends on the person. Yeah. And so, like I've said, we all have a tendency to be on this seesaw at different points in the day, and your child's no different. And you know, there are some people that feel really sleepy after lunch, and some people who bounce out of bed in the morning. Other people are kind of very slow and sluggish. And it's not to say any of these states are bad, and we kind of all have our own perfect balance. And sometimes they're helpful, like low arousal before bedtime definitely helps you to go to sleep, and high arousal maybe like before a party or during a party. You're going to be much more fun if you're feeling a bit like excited. And so our body naturally kind of slips into these states, but it's just useful to understand, because children aren't always able to know how to regulate and get to their just right state, and they might need a bit of adult help. And as they kind of have all these new experiences and new interactions and are taking on new information, you might find they become a bit more dysregulated a bit more often. So I'm going to kind of take you on to some practical strategies that can help encourage being at that just right spot, whatever that means for each individual. So one way, something that's really helpful, can be finding a way to talk to your child about how they're feeling and where they're at on that seesaw. And it's really helpful to have that in a visual way. And Emily's going to talk a little bit later about how in early years visuals can be like a really useful way of talking about emotions. So you can help your child to know where their alert levels or their emotions are, and then you can kind of help them to choose strategies, which I'm going to come on to in the next slide, for how to kind of get themselves to the green zone or the just right zone. So you could use the seesaw analogy, if that's kind of helpful to you and your child. Some people find the metaphor of a car engine really helpful. So you could create a speedometer, kind of how you see in the bottom right, where you have a very fast car for high, you have a really slow car for low, and then you maybe have just a kind of normal speed car. And you can kind of, ask your child where they are, and both of you can kind of move the speedometer along. You can make it with like one of those little pins that splits. And so, but some other ideas, you can use animals. So top right, you can see the turtle and the hare. And some schools use zones of regulation, which can be used in a similar way. You might want to use it just if your child's class is using it, it might help to have the kind of at home as well. And they have 4 sections instead of 3, and they use colours. But it's kind of, I wanted to show you a few different ways you can do it, because it's more about what's interesting and motivating for you and your child, and kind of what helps them like visualize how they're feeling. So whatever you choose, it's just about labeling for your child, like, how are you feeling? You might say, it seems like your body is a bit wriggly at the moment, which says to me you're running a little too high, or your engine's fast, or are you kind of a bit like Tigger right now? And what will help to bring you to the just right spot, or to the green. And this is what I'm going to go on and speak about now. So more those strategies that can help bring you to the green. I'm just finding my notes. Where they've gone. Okay. Anyway, so down regulating activity. So this is for people who are kind of in the high, bouncy, maybe a bit angry, kind of more the Tigger presentation. And the things that really help here are, from a sensory perspective, are slow, repetitive, hard work for the body. So we call it heavy work, and it's calming and organizing, and for our nervous systems, and can help bring us down to the just right. So this may look like something like carrying weight whilst moving. So there are loads of different ways you can do this. It might be that your child is like wanting to play schools, and they can put a few extra books in their book bag and kind of walk around. They might want to help you around the house, in which case you can use like laundry baskets with a few items in, or get them to put things away on shelves that are a bit heavy. You've got kind of the reaching, which also gives your body a lot of work that can be calming. And then we have things like wheelbarrow walks or races, which gives a lot of heavy work through the front of the body, but also you can ask your child to push even harder into the floor, or into your hands with their legs. And you can also kind of make it a bit of a race if you have another adult and child around. So you've got kind of this shared fun as well, which can be really regulating in itself. Something like squashing. So here we've got hamburger squash. They've actually got hamburger pieces, but you don't need to do that. You can use like sofa cushions, anything you have around the house. And the idea is that your child kind of lies on one of the sofa cushions, and then you play a game where you kind of making the burger, and you put different layers on, and then finally get the top bun of the burger, which could be a cushion, and you push down really, really hard, or as hard as they need. And yeah, that can be a really regulating experience for some children, and adults as well. Mixing, kneading, anything in the kitchen that you can do together, maybe if you're baking or they're helping you to cook, anything that kind of gives that resistance and they have to work a little bit harder, can be really, really regulating. And hugs, which is kind of something we call deep pressure, which is also regulating. If you have a nice tight hug, and you've also got the added element that it's kind of part of you bonding, and that's obviously regulating in itself. And that's why I've kind of tried to choose activities that you can do together, because although the sensory aspect is the heavy work, which can be really, really regulating, also your relationship with your child is always going to be important as well. And then we've got our up-regulating activities. So this is more kind of for the Eeyore presentation, being kind of feeling a bit slow, a bit sluggish, need to kind of get our nervous systems going and moving. So more fast, unpredictable movements, a lot of head movement can be very alerting, to help us kind of come up to the just right spot. So things like spinning, playground equipment, so going over, under, around. You can kind of do it as a bit of an obstacle course. All of these kind of give you loads of head movement and are a lot faster, so bring our nervous system up, get us feeling a little bit more awake. And sports and chasing games. So not only have you got the fun and the kind of change in direction and the speed of a game, if you're playing something like a chasing game, you've got the added kind of playful fear, which is actually really important at that age in development, so they can kind of learn that like it's within the context of play and I can get excited, but I can also then maybe down regulate again. So yeah, these can be really helpful for more alerting. Just a word of caution, alerting activities can be really like strong quite quickly. So something like spinning, you can imagine you can get really dizzy really fast, and you can kind of then tip over into the high alert, the Tigger kind of presentation really fast. So just use it with caution and kind of gauge how much your child needs. And then it just kind of about tuning into your child's speed. So we all go at different speeds, and we all kind of naturally fall on kind of one side of that seesaw in all our different ways. And sometimes our speeds won't match, and sometimes as adults our speed doesn't match the children that we're with, and that can be kind of difficult. So it's just kind of being aware, you know, if you're someone that does something really, really fast or does things really fast and you're quite like maybe like efficient with things and it kind of suits your lifestyle, but then you might have a child, and this is completely just an example because it can kind of go in any way, but you might have a child who it kind of likes doing things quite slowly and is a bit sensitive to like lots of speedy activities. It's kind of, yeah, just about thinking about how you're doing activities and whether there's ways you can help them to regulate through maybe doing something slower or faster, the activities that I've mentioned, but also their daily activities. So an example I always use is if you're kind of getting your child out of the bath and you're drying them, and it's like the evening, it's before bedtime, and you do it really, really fast, it's really fun, but it also can really alert someone just before bedtime. And so you could have an equally like enjoyable experience, but it could be more like you wrap them up in like a tight hug, and you kind of give them that more deep pressure, which can be down regulating. So the speed we do things with children can impact their regulation. And then yeah, another good example is maybe something like putting on shoes, and maybe your child has a tendency to do that quite slowly, but you're in a rush, and it's kind of thinking about how can you make that fun and maybe speed it up in a more kind of like not subconscious, but a more kind of like natural way, and maybe use like sand timers and things like that. I'm going to pass on to Emily now to talk about play. Oh, emotional validation. Sorry.
Okay. So emotional validation is so what we mean by that really is allowing children to have their feelings, so they learn they're capable of dealing with them, and just saying what you see. So just, and it doesn't. It's okay if you're not quite right, your child will tell you, or you can kind of check with them. It's sort of, I can see that you're feeling sad, and if they're, if you're wrong, then they will let you know. But it's just kind of just trying to sort of see where they're at with their emotions, and then just staying with the emotion. So not kind of trying too much to reassure or to move on quickly. Just staying with them while they're in that place. And I think it's a kind of something that kind of sounds quite simple, but then in practice is quite difficult to do. But it's something just to, I guess, to think about. So not trying to, because as parents, I think we can, we want to kind of help make things better for our children and to reassure them and kind of try and fix them. But it's just can be really important to just let them have the feeling that they're having, and then when they're ready to move on, you can think about ways to maybe kind of solve the whatever problem it is, or kind of work it through with them together, and kind of thinking about some of the activities that Ruby's just talked about as well. So it's all kind of really about just giving a bit more, just giving space to their feelings and you know, what they're experiencing. I'm going to talk about some kind of imaginative and creative ways to think about that as well in a moment. And also just the age that our children are at, the role of imaginary fears can really come into play. So and I thought this was quite interesting from Philippa Perry. So monsters under the bed are not silly. They are children showing parents that they need them close, calm and accepting. So if, you know, if your child is having bad dreams, or is, you know, is saying kind of, is sort of worried about monsters, and so just trying to think with them, or kind of for yourself first, and then trying to think with your child kind of what's behind the worry. And you know, just saying, you know, I'm wondering if you're feeling kind of like you might kind of want people kind of close at night. And again, this is where objects can come in really useful. So, you know, there might be a piece of your clothing that smells of you, that your child has with them at night time, or you might kind of you know, have a toy in your bed for a little bit and then kind of give it back to them. So again, kind of they've got your the smell of you near them. So just thinking yeah, about that stage they're at, where fantasy and reality are quite kind of mixed up in their mind a lot of the time. So it might be that these imaginative fears are very kind of, it can feel very real for some children. So just kind of having an awareness of that can be really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about play, and as we've got some ideas here for how children express their feelings through play, and this is something that they really do naturally. So for parents, it's just kind of being, you know, being aware of what is being communicated through play and what your children are telling you. So it can help them to have kind of words for feelings. So sometimes kind of if you say I feel, you know, if you use words to describe how you're feeling, so just simply saying you're feeling angry, sometimes the words don't match up to the force of what is being felt by the child physically in their body. So the movement activity that I've put here can be really useful in just maybe kind of thinking with your child about how they might move, like to show how angry they are. So they might be like a volcano or a huge fire, and then you can kind of, thinking along the same lines that Ruby's talked about, those sort of kind of trying to come back to that sort of Winnie the Pooh spot. Then you might ask them to, can they move like a flickering candle, and then can they bring it down to moving like water, sort of slow moving water. So thinking kind of about changing how they represent that, you know, those feelings to move them on from that kind of place of being in like the volcano. Or yeah, there might be a big whirling wind, which might transform into a cool, gentle breeze gradually. So, you know, kind of doing it at their own pace. So that's an idea that you might use if your child's really kind of in a kind of very physical, sort of high emotion place. And so the little boy with the dinosaurs, we'll see our children doing this, you know, kind of with toys and objects, whatever's in the house, and you can kind of, as the parent, just take note, kind of just maybe listen in, see what's happening in the play, what's being kind of maybe thought about by your child as they're playing, or what's being, it might be something that's happened in their school day that they're replaying with their toys. So just, again, just that might give you an idea of how they're feeling if you just observe that play. Call and responses, is a kind of quite a fun activity you can do with your child, where you, again, you're not using words, you're using sounds and echoing them back to each other. So, so for example, you might use kind of different bird sounds, or you might again use the kind of sounds of the elements, like what does a rainstorm sound like, and you can just kind of copy each other's sounds. That can be a kind of helpful tool to just try and, for children who find it harder to put into words what they're saying, what they're feeling, or what they're experiencing. It can turn it into a game as well for them. Any of these, if you want to kind of look back at them, as I said, we'll share the slides with you if you email us, and we'll also put it on the YouTube channel, because I'm aware I'm kind of going through them quite quickly, and you might need more time just to think about them. Okay, so role play is really important in early years, and schools will have a focus on role play as well. There'll be the home corner in the classroom, with the kitchen, and hopefully there'll be more dressing up things available. I know that kind of for children this year there hasn't been that much because of kind of having to clean things, but hopefully when your children are in school or nursery next year, there'll be more that they can dress up in and use. But I think there is, they're doing as much as they can to try and get the role play experience into the classroom. And you can do this at home as well. It might be something that you do over the summer to prepare for their new setting. So getting the toys out and getting them to be the other children, and then maybe taking it in turns to be the nursery key workers or the teachers. And and again, this can give you a lot of information. If your child is doing this when they start school and they're pretending to be the teacher, it can give you a lot of information about what their experience is like, kind of, what the teacher is saying, and their feelings about school. So just again, kind of maybe observing the play if they're doing this, or you can join in as well. And also using art. If you're able to have art, like pens and pencils and paper just available at home, it's really a really brilliant tool for children. And so drawing our feelings can, again, as I said, kind of if feelings are becoming maybe a bit overwhelming or very intense for younger children, just maybe get out the pens and paper and ask them to draw the angriest picture they can think of, or the saddest picture they can think of. So because there's no limits with drawing, you can they can express kind of maybe some of what they're feeling inside onto the paper. And just to say that it can be really tempting for us to interpret children's drawing and to say, oh, is that is that a volcano you're drawing, or is that is that you? But actually, if we don't sort of put our own meanings onto the picture and just let our children explain their drawings to us, then that will help them to feel that they're being kind of listened to, and you're hearing what what they are communicating. So you might ask a more open questions. So just simply asking them to tell you a bit about what their drawing is, or what would your picture say if it could talk. And you might like to have a special folder or a box where your child keeps their drawings, so that they know where they are, they know they're safe, and they can come and look back at them if they need to. So then we've just put in a few other resources that might be helpful, and these are for younger children, but also for for older children as well, as they go through school. So this is the idea of the worry balloons. So either drawing some balloons and writing down. You can help your child with this, writing down any worries, and then closing your eyes and imagining the balloons floating away. And you can do you can make a worry box as well. So similar idea. You might have heard of this, or worry monsters. Some nurseries and schools have. So whatever feels right for your child. And again, you can help them to write down or draw any worries and put them, post them inside the box, so that the idea is that the worry is kind of coming out of their mind and you're kind of physically putting it somewhere else. After you've talked about it with them. And then we've got glitter bottles. So any plastic bottles you've got at home, you can do this with. So just some water and some glitter. And so then shake the bottle, see the water kind of floating all around. And then this is the idea that if our tricky feelings are getting too big, then they can feel like kind of this, sort of all the glitter swirling around the water inside our mind. But then if you sit and keep watching until the glitter settles, that can be a really calming experience for children. And you can make as many of these as you like. And as in the picture, they've some of them they've used googly eyes and tissue paper, kind of making them into animals as well. So that might be something that you think about doing over the summer. Dens are again kind of something that young children love doing, and you can make dens in the house. You can use any spare sheets you've got, any boxes, chairs, just making a little den that they can go and play in, and that they've created. If you're out and about over the summer, if you're going into kind of anywhere that's got any woods, kind of sort of some of the the kind of bigger commons in South London, then you can do this with branches and twigs as well. Again, making a den for children to play in. Okay. We're just aware of time, so we're kind of speeding up a little bit as we come to the end of the presentation, because we want to have some time for questions as well. But this is, hopefully you can read this. So it's just the idea of, which may be familiar if you've got older children, might be very familiar to you already. But the idea that you will never get an answer to this question if you as soon as they come out of school saying, how was your day? More often than not, children will say nothing, and it is there's nothing to tell them, or it was fine, or it can be very frustrating because we want to hear all about their day, but they just refuse to tell us anything. So that is very, very common. So please don't worry about it if that happens. But you might think about kind of some other ways to sort of come at it from a different angle. So kind of maybe later, when you're having dinner together, or just if you're kind of having like in the bath, just saying kind of, what did anything funny happen today, or who did you play with today? Just asking those kind of gentle questions of just sort of kind of just gently telling your child that you're still thinking about how their day was, and even if you don't have an answer, that will be really valuable for them to know. Also, just to be aware of or be prepared for extreme tiredness. So it might be for some of your children that they've gone from doing maybe 2 or 3 days at nursery, and then they might be doing, have a full-time place and doing 5 days a week. And again, if they're starting reception, doing 5 days a week there. So please be prepared for this, and your routine might have to change a little bit. So thinking about bringing it bedtimes forward, and not putting too many after school activities in, maybe when they start, just building it up, seeing how they go.
I'm going to try and speed through this. Can you hear me? Yeah. But just a little bit about parent and carer self-care, and thinking about how your engine's running, because that's obviously really important all the time, but especially during these transitions, because as we've discussed, there's a lot of emotions coming up for you too. There's a changing routine for you as well. And children are sensitive to how we act, and it's kind of helpful for us to know where we are at with our emotions and our kind of more sensory regulation, and just thinking about what gets you to your just right zone. And we put some suggestions at the bottom of kind of like self-care activities, but just to kind of say also the activities that I spoke about earlier, the kind of down regulating, up regulating activities apply to adults as well. Obviously you might want to kind of change how you do them and make them more kind of appropriate to you, but they can also be really helpful tools. So if you kind of have the slides, you can have a think about that. And we've put a link in the resources as well, to kind of more parent self-care tips. And yeah, just being kind to yourself. You're going through a change, and there might be kind of added pressures, information, responsibilities, but hopefully also lots of new opportunities and experiences for you and your child to go through together, and kind of remembering that quote that Emily said at the beginning, that it's about those kind of shared experiences and the playing and the chatting and all those things. So kind of focus on them. Oops, sorry.
Okay, so just we're going to put up some resources for you, but just before we do, we asked some children who are just finishing reception this week. We asked them for any words of advice or words of wisdom that they would give to children starting in their class in September. So these are some of the things that they thought, and we thought that this was really, really lovely. You might want to share this with your child, some of these comments. So kind of the idea of making new friends, there's lots of nice new friends to meet. Saying, I like the children, I play with them a lot. And my first time at school, the children and the teacher were nice to me. I like the toys, we played doctors. So those are some of the current reception children's thoughts. We've put some books up here for you. So these are some for starting nursery and some for starting school. So do have a look at these, or think about getting them from the library. You can order books from the library, and they should have some of these books available, or get them for yourself to have at home. And then we put some books about worries and fears. The Invisible String and The Kissing Hand are both around sort of separation and anxiety about separating from parents and carers. So if your child is having difficulties with that, those are really lovely books. And then kind of there's books about worries, overcoming worries and fears, no matter what, as if your child is sort of having more kind of outbursts and sort of like tantrums at home, then that's a really lovely book to kind of to have on hand as well. We've put some online resources. So the BBC website is brilliant. It has lots of good resources for starting schools. Cosmic Yoga is on YouTube. There's loads of different episodes. They're all different. There's loads of different Disney stories, and they are very, very, children absolutely love them at this age. They're really great. And then we put the sensory videos that Ruby has talked about, so to have a look, and the uniform colouring activity as well. So this is the information about our service. The Wandsworth WP at swlstg.nhs.uk is the email to write to if you would like a copy of these slides. And as we said, we will also have it on our YouTube channel, so you can look back at it if you want to do that as well. If you're worried and you'd like to hear more about some of the services that we offer, then please email us as well.